So, hello everybody. I'm glad to introduce our next speaker, Graham McAllister. He's the Director of Player Research United Kingdom, and he will talk about the UX, past, present, and the future. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good luck.
So thanks, everyone. So this talk is not a history of UX or anything like that. It's meant to be more practical. However, I will talk about where UX came from and a little bit about why you should care about it. So why is this thing so important? And if it is so important, why doesn't most of the games industry do it? Because the amount of people who do actually do UX, whatever that means, is very, very small. So that interests me a lot. So we'll talk a little bit about that too. We may have more tech problems. We do have more tech problems. OK. Shall I just hit the button? Spoke too soon, Jay. Oof, we're back. So this term UX, as you probably realize, is also a problem. And this is the guy who invented the phrase UX, or user experience, Don Norman. He is one half of the Nielsen-Norman group. Don Norman was a psychologist. His colleague, Jakob Nielsen, who we'll see in a second, is a computer scientist. But Don Norman was the guy who was, first of all, the human factors division within Apple back in the day and things like that. And he said, you know, I invented this term because I wanted to represent that UX was more than usability. It's not just can someone use a product. Yes, that's important, but it's more than that. It's how you feel when you use the product that I really want to get to. And that's what UX, what he was trying to say. The problem is, in 2017, that UX means everything or nothing. I would say nothing, but hey, we'll talk about that. So that's a problem, because it's a problem for you if you're in the games industry, because if you want to hire someone to do UX for you, what exactly do you want? Do you know what you want? So that's very important, because UX comes in different flavors. And that's what Don Norman's getting at. He said, I didn't know it was going to be such a problem, because when I invented the term, I knew what I meant. But over time, things have changed. So there are, broadly speaking, two roles in the game industry that you need to know about. When people say UX, your very next question should be, which type? A UX designer, or UXD, we'll see what they do in a second, but broadly speaking, they're the one who help the game designer translate their requirements to design the user flow, the user interface, the feedback, the interaction design. The user researcher, on the other hand, asks the question to the designer, did you get it right? Because the designer says, I've designed a game that's going to be fun. And who's the person that says, really? Did you get it right? Well, that's the job of the user researcher, or UX researcher. So there's now three names for UX researcher. You have user researcher, UX researcher, and the growing term, if you like, is design research, or design researcher, because they are the one who's saying to the designer, did you do it right? So when people use any of those three terms, you have to bear in mind it's the same job. Just to add to your confusion, as if UX is not confusing enough. When I say UX today, I almost certainly mean UX researcher, because that's what I do, that's what my company does, and that's what I'm here to talk about. If I mean UX design, I will specifically say UX design. So anyone who's studied design, which is probably at least a lot of you in here, or read any textbook, you will know that design comes, broadly speaking, in three phases. There are three separate components to design. However, when you speak to the game industry, they typically only do one of them. They hire a designer to do the design. That's not surprising, right? So at the top right, you have the UX designer. That's what you know. However, nearly every other industry, from car making to spaceships, to toasters, to kettles, to televisions, they would do all three. So they hire someone to check the design, the user researcher. So this is really strange for me. When I was an academic and teaching in universities and trying to research the area of why do games suck, essentially, I was wondering, why is this the case? Why are these games with very trained people who are very experienced, why are they still not great? And when you look into how a game was made, even today, they're only doing 1/3 of the design cycle. So are you really shocked when you're only doing 1/3 of design, that your design is not great? That shouldn't come as a surprise to anybody. However, when you ask most studios, how do you check your design? Like, analytics, guessing, experience? Okay, well, how has that worked out for you? Well, so these other phases have been here for a long, long time, and yet the game industry has somehow said, no, thank you, broadly speaking. So this UX research, if you're not familiar with it, this is the last sort of introductory slide. If you're not familiar with it, these are the sorts of things that a UX researcher would do, not a UX designer. So at the beginning, before you design your game, before you design anything, in fact, you're meant to understand either the people or existing products. So it comes in two different flavors. What can you do before you design your game? Well, you should be speaking to people who play similar games. Why do they play those games? Do they like them? Did they make a purchase? If not, why not? If they did make a purchase, were they fulfilled? Are they likely to make another one? Do they play your game along with another one? When do they pick up your game? If you can't answer these questions, then you're guessing. And if you guess, you'll make poor design decisions. So that's why UX research is saying, okay, cool, you've got an idea for a game. That's wonderful. But you're going up against someone else. Do you know why they're successful? And why do people play those games? You can learn a ton of stuff before you do one line of code, before you come up with new features, before you come up with concept art. Do you do that? I think you know the answer. A lot of our studios somehow don't quite do this. And bear in mind, if you don't do these things, your design has just got weaker. It's not as strong as it could have been. So even before you design or code or do anything, you should understand. The middle phase, during the design phase, what sort of things do UX researchers do? Well, they apply the principles of how your mind works, how your brain works, how your attention works, your perception, your memory, and they're applying that to your design. We've all seen those tutorials that say, tap here, tap here, tap here, and they try and guide you through. And then you ask the player, how does this game work? And they say, I don't know. Well, are you surprised? So there's a better way of doing those sorts of things. And you can find that out during the design phase. The previous talk here today was from Fingersoft. And Vila said, you know, we designed our UI 3 times during production with final quality assets. Man, that's expensive. And he says, we should have done that in design when it was on paper. We didn't. We waited until it was final and then found out it was wrong. Then we did it again. And it was wrong. We did it again. Why does that happen? Finally, at the end, this looks like a linear cycle, but it's not. It's iterative, of course. Did you get the design right? That's the key goal of the user researcher. I assume this cool new feature I've put into my game is unique, and I assume that players will love it, because I love it. Awesome. Let's check. Have you even spoken to players? Does this feature exist in another game? Would they use it? Why would they use it? Why do you think it's unique? What feeling would it give you? What sort of players? The biggest question of all, perhaps. Who would enjoy this? If you're designing a feature in a game, you're making design decisions. Who is the design decision for? If you don't have the player in mind, then how on earth are you making a design decision? You're just making it for yourself. I will make this decision. The game is not for you. The role of user research is to say, that's cool, let's test that with your target audience. And by the way, you should know exactly who they are. And I don't mean age or gender or things like that. I mean what sort of games they are playing, why they play them, where does the fun come from, why do they find that fun, why do they find that frustrating. That's the sort of stuff you should be knowing and testing against. So broadly speaking, that's the sort of things the user researcher does. It says, cool, we are here to check your design at every single phase of development. From the from the moment you have the idea, through to the design, the prototype, the pre-production, production, all the way through to 10 years after release. We work on RuneScape, for example. That game is 16 years old, and it's still getting better every single year. Their revenues are going up. In the last 3 years, have had their most successful years. You can do these things, but it takes effort. It's not by chance. So again, this is not a history lesson, but I'm just going to tell you why this field exists, and hopefully you're getting a flavor for it. Yes, it's there to check the design, but why is that so important? I'm going to show you some evidence from games that will highlight this is why you should be paying attention to it or more attention to it. So this is a slide from a book from 1955. And when I was writing this talk, the theme of the whole conference is the future of video games. And someone asked me, well, what's the future of UX in video games? You know, what are we going to be doing in 2018, 2020, 2025? And I said, you got to be kidding me. The game industry isn't even doing the things from 1950. In terms of how people work or how much attention you put onto people, forget about the future. You're not even close to the past. You know, this stuff is 70 years old, and yet most of the game industry is still not paying attention to it. Why is that? Your game will be a lot better. So this is Henry Dreyfuss in a book called Designing for People. And bear in mind, computers weren't existing the way they are today back in 1955. But he was saying, as an industrial designer, I will do a better job if I understand you. If I understand you, I will make the environment better for you. I will make a product better for you. You'll be happier with my product because I understand how you think, how you work, how you behave, how you interact with others, how you use the product in certain situations. It wasn't by accident. They knew that by doing this, they were going to be more successful. They knew that people would be happier if they did this. They also knew if they didn't do this, the people would not like their product. They would not be happier in the environment, that they're more likely to get ill, and things like this. So these principles have been around for a really, really long time. And you would imagine that over time, the game industry would have latched onto this in the way that nearly every other single design industry has done the same. Even Pixar, if you look at their process of how they make movies, they have taken components of this and applied that to the creative process. And Pixar do okay. They're quite successful. But somehow the game industry has been more resistant. So that was 1955. Let's bring that forward a little bit to the 90s. Jakob Nielsen, the partner of Don Norman, who I mentioned earlier, he said, well, e-commerce was getting more important on the web. And if you want to make money on the web, people need to make a purchase. If you want to buy on Amazon or any other store, or on the store of your game even, then people need to be able, usable, to do that. And he said, these are the sorts of 10 principles that apply to getting something done. This is not really about, is it aesthetic, or, well, there is aesthetics, but it's not really about, is it enjoyable? He was primarily interested in, can people do it? I want you to book a holiday, to buy a book, to buy a CD, to download a PDF, whatever. And I don't want to frustrate you while doing that. So if you take these principles into consideration when designing your interface, you're very, very likely to do a better job. And we've known this for over 30 years now, maybe more. And still, obviously, games do not even stick to these 10 principles. So these aren't perfect. These are not really for you. They're not for video games. But if you apply these to your own game, they will almost certainly highlight a problem today. To highlight this, Don Norman, back to Don Norman again, he says, if you say you're in UX, but you're not involving a real user, then don't do it. Math people will hate this. Obviously, the formula doesn't work. Don't analyze it. However, the principle remains. If you're speaking to someone and they say they're in UX, say, cool, when do you involve the users? And if their answer is, oh, we don't speak to people, then that's not really UX. That's called design. And that's fine. There's a place for design. But bear in mind, it's not UX. So what he was getting at was the same principle. If you want to make a better product, you need to involve people as often throughout development as possible. And that's what human-computer interaction essentially tries to do. It takes the user-centered design process and says, let's bring these people in. Let's bring them in at all stages, not just at the end. Let's bring them in during the understanding phase, during the design phase, and then, of course, at the end, during the assessment phase. And this looks linear again. It's not. It's iterative. You should be doing this to your prototypes, to your competitors' products. Why do they enjoy? Have you ever watched someone play your competitor's game to figure out why they enjoy it? That might be interesting. So let's look at some evidence, in case you think I'm crazy, which is possible. We were hired to analyze 100 video games. So a company hired us and said, look, we're interested in assessing how these games are performing. So each vertical strip is one video game. And there's 9 rows per game. So there's 9 components that all games have in common. For example, the very top one is tutorial. That little top square represents the tutorial for each game, the 100 games. And if it's a red square, that means the tutorial is awful, really bad. And red means, by and large, a vast majority of players will struggle, either leave that game or fundamentally not be able to play it. They are not equipped to play that game. So they'll eventually leave somewhere on the user journey. If it's yellow, it means a significant number of players will probably leave, and green means okay. It's probably satisfactory. Could be better, but by and large, it's okay. So even taking that one component, the top one for tutorials, you can see that the vast majority of them are red or yellow. That's the introduction to your game. That is you trying to tell the player, here's where the fun comes from. And most companies can't do it. They are failing to explain. This is where, if you play the game the way the designer wants, you are going to have more chance of having fun. Yes, some players will push through. We know that, of course. But you want to increase the amount of players getting into your game and having fun as quickly as possible. And yet, these are all professional designers. They've all made games before, many games before. And yet, the story is, for the vast majority of components, not just a tutorial, we have other things here, for example, depth or replay value, or feedback, or controls, the fundamentals of most games. And the overall picture is quite terrible. It is not strong. So this interests us. Why does this happen? How come professional designers with many games under their belt, this should be green, right? Or maybe, there wasn't a lot of yeses there. Anyway, oh, really? Green? I don't know. So when I was an academic, I had a master's student at the time, and we looked into this deeper. We said, well, why do what sort of mistakes exist? So we know mistakes exist. What flavor do these mistakes come in? So we took different reviews. We looked at Metacritic, hundreds of game reviews. We took professional Metacritic, user Metacritic. This was Edge magazine as well. So this is 1 year of Edge reviews. And you can see the most frequent score that year was a 7, as it pretty is much every year. Some games got an 8 or 9. None got a 10. There's only been 15 Edge 10s in history, so it's quite a hard score to get. None got a 1. But a 7 in video game land isn't great. That's not considered a success. An 8 is good. A 7 is average. We could talk about scales all day long, I know, but a 7 is not a success in the games industry by and large. So why does this picture exist? Why are there no 10s, only a handful of 9s, 20-ish 8s? And those 7s are probably the most interesting. They could have been amazing. Those 7s, they could have been billion-dollar franchises, but they were flawed. So the interesting thing is, well, why were they flawed? So we looked at, the student at the time analyzed all these reviews, hand-coded, and said, what sort of things do professional game journalists talk about when they critique a game? What do they praise? What do they critique in a negative way? And then do the same for user reviews. What do users talk about? What do they praise or what do they critique? And what we found was that there was 5 broad areas. Of all the things that professionals and users talk about, there was 5 areas in common amongst all these reviews. One of them was technical, bugs, frame rate, just things that are broken, whatever, tech stuff. But the other 4 were all to do with UX or human experience. I mean, that's not surprising. That's why we play games, right? For the feeling. It'd be surprising if it wasn't all related. But going deeper, number 2 was usability related, so problems with being able to do things in the game. Game components is things like depth. Is there enough to do? Is there enough features? Expectations, did it do what you thought it would do? On the App Store, for example, that's a massive problem. What you promise the user and what they get once they download it doesn't always match up. You've lost them right there. And of course, how you feel about the game. So not just the features, but the feeling the features give you. So this is what these journalists and users are talking about. And by chance, that is what UX, pretty much UX research, the job is to remove those sorts of issues. Just to give you an idea, when I jump back, these 5 areas, within player research, this is kind of our, sort of our process, let's say. These are the methods we use in game development. But up the side, you'll see these are the 5 layers that we kind of assess. So if you want people to pay you, monetization, you have to deliver a great game, player experience, but you're not going to deliver a great game unless it's usable, people can do it, but you're not going to find it usable unless you understand it, and you're not even going to download it unless you find it interesting. So you can see it's like a hierarchy. And this hierarchy more or less came from, this evidence. It's evidence-based. We looked at what was being critiqued, and then we designed a method to go and remove these issues systematically through game development. A tenuous analogy, I know, but it's a bit like Breakout. At the top, is the stuff that you want. You want loyal fans. You want a wide player base. You want high revenues. You want people to say, I love that studio. They make awesome stuff. But you're not going to get there unless these blocks are removed systematically from game development process. Are people interested in your game? Do they see why it's different? If you can't even explain that, you've lost right away. Oh, it's another one of those. I'd already play that. I don't need another one. Who cares what your game's like? You haven't even got them at the appeal stage. If they're interested in your game, then do they understand how to play it? That tutorial. Again, the evidence said, not really. It's not looking great. Usability, again, there was lots of reds and yellows in that 100-game assessment that we did. Very, very poor. Then into the harder stuff. Is your game even interesting? Oh, that's tough. Is the game fun? It's hard to assess directly if a game is fun. It's quite difficult. But these indirect measurements of things like usability and understanding, they are very measurable, and they will impact on your game in a negative way. So you're going to vastly increase your chances of delivering a good player experience and monetization if you chip away these lower layers. So it's kind of like a game of breakout, sort of. So, where are we today? That's the evidence. That's me saying these problems exist in your games. They exist in everyone's games because we've kind of looked at it. And most of the issues that exist in games are UX related. But also, there's a way of removing them. So how do you do that in the best possible fashion? UX is not a binary condition. It's not like, oh, we do UX or we don't do UX. What I'm about to show you is 8 different levels. And your studio will be one of those 8 different levels. And what I'm hoping is you'll identify which level you're at and then how you can level up. Say, well, OK, that's where we are today. That's fine. But if we're better, then we're more likely to build a better studio. We're more likely to build a better game. We're more likely to keep players playing longer, that sort of thing. So basically what I'm trying to show you is what well looks like. When we get to the top, I'll show you the studio who I think is probably doing the best in the world at the minute. It's very debatable, I know. But we'll have a good chat about that later. So where did this evidence come from? These 8 levels I'm about to show you. Well, I speak to about 200 to 300 game studios a year. We're an external company, and we speak to studios worldwide. Of the 200 or 300 that I speak to, we work with about 60 or 70 of them. So about a quarter-ish, let's say. And over speaking to this many studios every year, I've started to understand their maturity of UX. What are they doing today? Some of them are very mature, they're doing lots of stuff, and some don't know what it means. So this is where it came from. I'm not making this stuff up. It came directly from conversations with many hundreds of game studios over the last 6 years. Let's just get into it, because time's running out. So broadly speaking, there's 8 levels. You will be somewhere today. The bottom 4, like a true programmer, I've started at 0. 0 to 3 are harmful. In other words, if you are in 0 to 3 today, you're probably making your game worse, not better. So you could be actively doing UX on your game, but in such a bad way, your product is getting worse. Your team morale may be getting worse. If you're in 4 to 7, awesome, good for you, but you can probably improve. Now, if we're going to distinguish between 8 levels, you need a way of distinguishing, well, how do you know if you're in level 1 or 0, or level 0 or level 1? How do I know if you're in level 0 or level 7? And these are the variables we're going to use to differentiate between these levels. So one of them is staff or resources. Who do you employ? What exactly is their background? Are they qualified to be doing user research, or is it just someone who you've found who's got an interest in user research? It's a massive difference. Resources goes along with that. Is it a dedicated lab, or are you just using a corner of the office? Things like that. The second is a dedicated budget. When you look at your project plan today, do you have role or budget for programmers or artists or QA or audio? Do you have a budget for user research? Oh, I saw a nod. That's good. A quick show of hands. Who's got a budget for user research? Not bad. OK. I'm impressed. More than I thought, by the way. It's always about a 10th, which is still more than I thought. But anyway. So do you have a dedicated budget for this thing? That's great if you do. Breadth of UX is saying, when do you do it? The methods that you're using, are they just at the end? We'll do a playtest before release. Or is it, no. We're going to do it at all the stages throughout development. So that breadth is very important. The sooner you start, the better your game will get. You'll get incremental improvements throughout development. Whereas just having one improvement at the end, not as good. Depth of UX is who reads your report. Is it just the programmers or designers, or is it the CEO? How up and down vertically within your company, who reads that report? The final one I had to add, because there are some companies, and I'm not going to name any names, there are some companies who could tick all those boxes. We have dedicated staff, they're qualified, we give a budget to it. We do it all across the life cycle, and the CEO reads the report. But yet their games aren't very good. So how does that happen? It looks on the surface like these should all be good, it should all be green. So I had to add something that said, but does it show in the final product? Because if it doesn't show in the final product, I don't care what you tick. I couldn't care what boxes you tick. I care about the experience the player has a lot, though. So that was the final one I had to add in, because something was missing. OK, very quickly. This is all 8 levels with all those variables inside. And you can see, for example, at the very bottom, level 0, these red dots, they're not even on the scale. The companies, they're not even there. I didn't even have a red dot because I thought, man, they don't even know what it is. So I didn't even want to color it in. We're going to go through these one at a time. Don't worry too much. But it's just to say these bottom 4 are negative. They're probably harmful to your game, even though you're investing time and money. And the top 4, you're definitely improving your game. How much? Well, we could talk about that a lot. So what I'm going to do is tell you symptoms that you're at each level. If you spot any of these things that I say, you should be on that level. There's a good indication that you're on that level. Oh, I should say, before I begin, there's 8 levels. I'd love for you to think, I don't want to know the answer, but just think where do you think your studio is? Before I show you all 8 levels, it'd be nice for you to guess, well, if there's 8 levels, maybe we're in the middle, or maybe we're at the top or at the bottom. Just have a rough idea of where you think you are today. How UX mature. And bear in mind, when I say UX mature, what I'm really talking about is, how much focus do you put on the player? How much do you care about the player? Because that's what this is. This is putting all the effort in saying, is the player going to have a good time with our game? So have a guess where you think you may be. And then you can tell me later at the party how far off or accurate you were. Who knows? All right, level 0. This is very common. I have had conversations I've been away this week, but last week I've spoken to studios who definitely are at this level. If you think UX is UI, or if you don't know the difference between UX design, UX research, this has been said to me this week. If you use the word focus group, but you mean a playtest, that's not great. If you can't differentiate between market research and user research, or why you would use one or the other, if you can't differentiate between perception and behavior, and you don't understand why 6 players is enough for a usability test. So if there's anything on that list where you don't know 100% the answer to, I'm sorry to break it to you, you're at the bottom. And that's important. At least you should acknowledge that if you are. Because if you can't answer all those questions, the reason it's so important is you can't make an intelligent decision. You cannot answer. You don't know what your company needs. We need a focus test. What on earth is that? Market research? Are you sure you need market research? Oh, no, we don't need market research. We need a user test. But you use the wrong word. You're not making intelligent, informed decisions, which means your game is not necessarily getting better. By the way, I have a long list of these, which I'm not going to share. But these are some that I hear on a regular basis. The one focus test comes up a lot, as does UX design, UXR. Hey, we need some UX on our game. Cool. What do you want? Wait or no? All right, let's talk about that. This slide, by the way, is how you improve. I'm not going to talk about these today, but I know this is being recorded and the slides will be available for download. So I'm leaving them in so you can download them later on or pause the video and you can read them at your own time. So if you want to go from a level 0 to a level 1, this slide will tell you the sorts of things you could do to level up. But I'm not going to focus on it today because time is quite short. OK, so level 1. Level 1 means you now know about it. You know exactly what UX design, UX research is. You know about focus groups. You know about all these wonderful things. You just don't do it. You're like, yeah, whatever. Not interested. There's many reasons for this, of course. One of the ones I've heard a lot is, well, we're artists. We're making art, so clear off. You know, we know what we want to make. In the good old days, when there was console games being made, or more console games, it was sales data. You know, well, we don't need that. We've got their money, right? We've got the $60, so who cares? That happened a lot. I should say. Nowadays, the modern equivalent of that is, hey, we just use analytics. Why would we bother talking to people when we can measure it with a graph later on? Yeah, good luck. We play test at expos. You know, what's wrong with that? We get people who are walking by at a convention booth. I mean, that's user testing, right? Mm-hmm. Only 5 minutes left, I'm going to have to speed up. Our friends and family play our game, we ask other developers. These are all sorts of mistakes where, well, you should maybe do some of these things. They're maybe not necessarily awful, but bear in mind, they're not your target user, and that's the key point. These are not the people who are going to play your game and give you money. So yes, you can do these things if you want, but bear in mind, what are you going to change as a result? Is this the right data? Just a quick case study. This is a game called Punch Quest, which you may know. And they released their game with 2 critical, glowing reviews. Awesome, game of the year. It made no money whatsoever. And they went on and said, what on earth happened? We made this amazing game, and we didn't make any money. What's up? That really shocked us. And they said things like, we showed it to all our friends, we showed it to all our developers, and they didn't know. They didn't know what was wrong. And it surprised us that actually some of the mistakes we made were unbelievably small. And that's the whole thing about UX research. These are not big, obvious mistakes. If they're big and obvious, you will find them and fix them. They're unbelievably small, subtle mistakes. That's why they exist, and that's why they go unnoticed a lot of the time. So again, I'm going to skip those slides. Level 2 is have a go. So we see people in the studio who just express an interest in user research. Hey, putting people in front of a game, I can do that. What's so hard? Well, everything's hard about that, turns out. But we see people who just express an interest and they go into it. And anyone familiar with Feynman's cargo cult science, it's exactly that. It looks like a play test. People are coming in, they're playing a game, people are taking notes, but it's random, it's ad hoc, it's poorly asked questions, it's people who are biased. So it looks like a play test, but it's junk. There's no actual science going on whatsoever. Again, you can look at these when the stream's available for download in the slides. I'm not going to talk about that. This level's getting interesting now because you're starting to allocate some resources and funds. You're allocating someone within your studio to do user research. So you're interested in it. But man, you're just not doing it well enough yet. So one of the main reasons is the person doing it's just not the right person to do it. It's not their background. It's not necessarily their fault. It's just not their background. That's fine. You shouldn't get me to do the programming or art for your game. There you go. It's not my background. It's the same with user research. Who is doing it? Is the right staff doing the right job? Do they know the difference in all the ways that possibly bias and influence this game? And if they don't, well, they shouldn't be doing this. They should be doing something else that will help your game. That's completely fine. We've definitely seen this where people express an interest and they're now the internal user research department, but they're not effective. They're probably making the game worse. So we've only got a few minutes. I'm just going to go through these very quickly. These are getting to the better stage. These are, level 4 is like a team of 1. But this person would be qualified. They would have a master's or PhD in human-computer interaction or human factor psychology or something relating to running experiments with people. They know all the ways that you can influence and get bad data. They know how to do statistical analysis and run usability studies. Despite all that, they're probably a team of 1, which is fine, but bear in mind that comes with limitations. Their background is from one perspective. You may want more different perspectives. And they'll also be relatively junior typically. So they're maybe not used, although they know the principles and theory of doing it, they're not well versed in doing it. So again, it's interesting. It'll maybe make your game better, but it's certainly not the best you can do. The final point is just saying they're maybe only good at doing one type of test. Oh, we can do a heuristic review, a principle list, or we can run a usability test. But what about the other 15 methods? Do you know about those? Are they better for your game? Why? Are they cheaper? Are they quicker? Can you make an informed decision? What's the best way to answer this question? Possibly not. I don't know. So level 5, you have to bear in mind that I run an outsourced UX company, so I don't want to bias anyone here, but this is possibly a level up. One of the ranges, you have different people from a broader range, and we don't just see one studio's games. So we don't just work for company X and see their games. An outsourced studio would see everyone's games. So that's one of the advantages, and the staff are maybe a bit broader, possibly a broader background if you have a larger team. But bigger companies would see this too. Level 6, we're getting to the top. So level 6 is lifecycle UX, and that means your company is so mature that they're doing UX research at all stages. That thing I showed at the beginning, they're doing research with players before the game is designed, they're doing it during design, and they're measuring during the pre-production and production and post-launch phases. They're doing it at every single stage. This is a mature company. But it's still not perfect, despite the wide range. Again, I have companies in mind, because these all came from real companies. I'm certainly not going to name them. But they can be doing good work, but not the best work. Just as an example of how soon you can start, this is a slide from GDC, and the user researcher on Destiny, who is also the lead user researcher on the Halo games, was talking about how early should you be beginning user research. When should you start? And they said on Halo 2, you can see it's what, about 17 months out, all the way through to Destiny, they started 4 years before the game was launched. So how soon can you start? Today. Actually, probably yesterday, but yes. And that's what they did. Do not wait. In fact, if someone says we're not ready, that's a warning. Why are you not ready today? What are you scared of? Why would you not do it? There could be a good reason, by the way, but at least ask the question, why not do it? This is also relatively controversial. This is the Metacritic rankings of the Big 10. The top 10 publishers in the game industry do a ranking every year. And this year, EA is at the top. So what that means is they are consistently good at delivering games. And for 2 years running, Ubisoft are at the bottom of the top 10. I have many friends who do user research at Ubisoft. There's over 100 of them around that. So it's not for a shortage of the people doing it. But possibly one of the reasons is, well, is it making an effect in the game? Is that report being read by the right people? So I genuinely don't know the answer of why there's so many user researchers, but the games are at the bottom. What it means is some games are good, but all games aren't good. So it's not enough to make one title good. Can you do it consistently? That's one of the principles of user research. Making sure every single game you make is consistently great. EA have demonstrated we're on it. We can do that. We're at the very top, level 7. This is what I've called organizational UX. I don't know the right term for it. I'm still struggling with it, to be honest. But what I was trying to indicate is the CEO, the COO, the CFO, they are asking for the playtest report. How's our game doing? Everybody is bought into the player experience. If you really want to be a player-first studio, then talk about the players. How is the player doing on our game? How was the latest playtest being run? When's it being run? Are the programmers asking for it? Does that report, is it being put up and being read by the whole studio? In some studios, the answer is yes. And what do you know? They make pretty good games. Is that a surprise? The people I arguably think are at the top is Riot. We saw Greg Street's talk yesterday, and he talked about how Riot involved players at every single stage of development. And they do. Their insights team, their usability labs, their psychologists, they're all linked to business intelligence, to analytics, to community management. Anywhere where they get feedback from the player, they all feed that information back and communicate it to the company. This is our players. This is how we make great games. And most other studios are not quite at this level. They have elements of it, for sure, but they don't have everything. Finally, the future. I think the obvious answer would be to say tech stuff, machine learning, blah, blah, blah. But I'm not going to say that. The reason is, the future for me in UX is having everybody in this room, in fact, everyone everywhere making a game, you're all on levels 4 to 7. I would be very, very happy if I spoke to every studio and they were on levels 4 to 7, and nobody was on this lower level. I've left some steps there for you to read, to try and what you should do to get yourself off the bottom. But education is probably the easiest to start. If you can't answer those simple questions that I showed at the beginning, what do you need? Can you differentiate between them? That's a great place to start. Thank you. I think we have some time for questions.
Thank you, Graham, for a great talk. We have time for 3 questions, so please, you're welcome.
Very precise. I like that.
Anyone?
Graham, great talk. I had a question. You kind of talked about it a little bit. When it comes to education and when someone knows nothing, what tack do you take, and how do you first engage someone without sending them running off thinking you're a jerk? But you want to educate them, you want to get them into UX.
Yeah, I think we're different. So we're external, right? So one of the problems is if you email us or phone us up, you're already over that hurdle of I want to know. You know, it's like I phoned up this company to do something on my game. So I feel we're in a lucky position that there's some hurdles overcome, but you're right, they come with a position of not knowing, they don't know what they need. So I think the first question we certainly ask is, you know, why did you come to us? What was the reason, what was the driver that came here? And they'll say things like, well, players aren't staying in our game, or they don't know how to play our game. So we always start with their problem. What do you think's wrong today? And then we say, well, if that's the question you have, if that's the research question, maybe you need a usability study or a play test, or maybe you need a heuristic analysis on something, or maybe a long-term diary study. You know, if people are dropping off on day 10, but not on the other days. So we always try and take their problem and say, cool, you've identified the problem. And we explain why that's the best method of answering that question. So it's just a lot of listening. What's going wrong? Because usually if you call us up, something's gone wrong a lot of the time, or you want to avoid something going wrong. Hopefully preventative, I would hope. Sorry, yes.
Thank you for your nice speech. I just want to ask such thing as UX is a science of a kind, right? Mm-hmm. And sometimes in game industry, some anomaly happen when something that looks just really ugly becomes super popular, right?
Yeah.
How do you consider this? How do you
the aesthetic?
incorporate this cases in your theories to like work better?
Yeah. So. I am going to try and jump back very quickly. Very quickly. This one. So this is our UX pipeline. So what I'm trying to say is when we work on games, we start at these lower layers of understanding and usability and easier stuff, right? We can't assess if people understand your game. We can't assess if people find it usable. The harder question, as you say, is what if it's just really ugly, right? So the techniques for that could be concept tests. You know, we're putting, I think they were mentioned, maybe even Sean mentioned them yesterday, or Sophia was talking about concept tests and things like that. So you can assess the art style. Now, what's interesting for us is, does art style impact on the enjoyment of the game? If that was your question, can you make a really ugly game that does really well? You definitely can, yes. Because the experience of the game is still, it doesn't matter that it's a terrible looking game. Does anyone play Rage of Bahamut here, for example? You know, there are plenty of Flappy Bird, my goodness. These are not wonderfully beautiful games in any way, but they feel great, right? So, and some people go for that aesthetic. You know, you're talking about a subjective area. Stardew Valley. You know, do you like pixel art? Man, I hate pixel art, or I love pixel art. I don't know if that's right or wrong, that you should like Stardew Valley or not. So again, who's your audience? Who are you going for? Will they like this art style? And then have you removed the barriers so that, you know, they can find the fun in the game? Did that answer your question, by the way, the link between the aesthetics and the science, if you like?
Yeah, mostly. But sometimes I'm talking about anomalies. Like, it should not worked. Like, according to all you did, it should not work. You analyzed something, and according to all you know, it should not worked. But it worked, and it earned, I don't know, billions, right?
Are you thinking of Minecraft?
This is a real case. I think.
Okay, please, one last question.
Hello. Thanks for a very interesting talk. A very similar question to the previous one. If you look at the most successful games today, like League of Legends, Crossfire, Dungeon Fighter, World of Tanks, when they got released and when they actually picked up, all of them had terrible, terrible, extremely terrible UX. Everything is laggy. The game crashes. It's like you're going through hours of humiliation before you learn the game. And it's good to have Riot as an example, like players first company, but if you follow their history, you know that they were actually forced to become the players first company, because otherwise it happened like, I don't know, 3 years ago. They would have been destroyed by their community if they didn't take this approach, because the community is so huge. So what's your take on this? How this connects with what you've been talking in your presentation?
First of all, I should say I'm not the psychologist at player research, so I'm a computer scientist. So I'm probably not the person to answer this from a psychological point of view. The people I employ would give you a much better answer than me. I'd probably just give you a very general answer, maybe unsatisfactory, but when you master those games, right, when you get there, they're obviously very satisfying to play. In other words, look at these layers here. At the top, you have player experience. Forget about money for now, but player experience is at the top. And in a lot of games, including Minecraft and most of the ones you mentioned, that there are enough players who are willing to battle through the awful tutorial, the awful UX, the awful user flow, because the game itself is unbelievably fantastic. It is worth it. There are obviously certain player types, Bartle player types were mentioned yesterday. It's almost a badge of honor to say for some people to battle through as well and say, well, I learned it, so you must be stupid if you can't do it, right? There's an element of that too. Again, I'm not the psychologist, so I wouldn't talk about those things the way others would. So if you've created an amazing game, Minecraft is another example where there was no tutorial. There still isn't on the PC version, I think console version does. But there's enough YouTube and ways of learning it, because the things you can do with that game when you get there are unbelievable, and you may never get that experience somewhere else. So it's worth it if you want to do it, if you want that experience. You may not get it, it's a one-off. I don't know if I've answered your question satisfactorily or not.
Yeah, that's fine. Thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
Thanks anyway. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Graham. And you are welcome to ask questions personally.
Thank you.
We have many great people here at 4C today, and here's one of them. Hi, please introduce yourself.
Hello, I'm Alexander Markovic. I am Creative Director at Ministry of Games, and I'm here to talk about city building games and design principles of those.
Nice. Do you remember your very first video game that you've played?
Sure, it was The Prince of Persia back in something like '89 or whatever it would have been. Yes.
It's a great game back in the day and still. What's your favorite game of all time today?
I guess I like mobile games, so at the moment I think my favorite game would be probably something like Brawl Stars or Clash Royale, so Supercell PvP titles, or on the other hand, some city building titles like Township.
What do you think about the state of modern video game industry overall?
Well, I guess there is a lot happening at the moment, which is awesome. The core games are doing awesome stuff. The casual games are doing awesome stuff. So I think it is awesome that inclusion is happening on all sides, right?
Anything that maybe irritates or saddens you, something that you don't like in the state of game dev today?
Well, the only thing that might sadden us is the sometimes there is a bit of lack of inclusion happening, and sometimes there is a certain amount of kind of toxic behavior that occurs in the gaming circles. But other than that, I think it is just moving in the awesome direction.
Well, it is moving in an awesome direction, and we're here to try and foresee it. Speaking of which, what do you see happening in the industry in like a 10 years' time? What will be the new thing, the new trend, do you think?
Well, hopefully the mobile games stay relevant, right? But other than that, obviously AR and geolocation games are super interesting, and stuff that's happening with that is super exciting, and also hopefully as things move forward, we get more inclusive or like more engaged worlds that we kind of play together with each other. And I think this is something that we're hopefully moving towards too.
Well, you're part of the industry, you can help move it forward. Speaking of which, how did you end up in the industry? How did you come here?
Well, I guess as anyone else, I just kind of liked the whole idea of the escapism of the games that was offered to us as we were young, and I just kind of stick with them throughout my youth, and it was a logical choice growing older, right?
What's more important for you in games that you like graphics, storytelling, the gameplay, or maybe a combination?
I guess in the end, for me, it comes back to the community and kind of the shared experience of playing the games. So it is in the end about kind of multiplayer of it.
What about the single-player games then?
Which are also awesome. There is nothing about games that is not awesome, right? So single-player games also cool. Whatever story-driven RPGs, story-driven text adventure games. There is nothing to dislike in those either, but for me, just kind of the multiplayer experience is something that drives the medium forward into kind of this new, less explored areas of just kind of playing with your, children or with your parents or with your grandparents. Why not? And I guess this is something that just excites me.
So the future is in multiplayer and socializing in games. Is that right for you?
Well, I hope it is I guess what I'm saying.
Well, we can move it over there. St. Pete, we're here today. What do you think about the city?
A beautiful city, Peter Pit. So awesome times to be had all around, and I'm glad to be here. Thankful for the opportunity.
Glad to have you here. Also surprised you know the cult song about St. Pete. What about the conference? I know it's the first day, but what are your impressions so far? Maybe expectations?
Well, I've met some awesome people all around. I'm looking forward to hearing their talks, to hearing their thoughts on the future of gaming and the future of the industry, and have high hopes.
Any specific speech you're maybe looking forward to? Somebody you want to listen to?
So there is, for example, the Greg Street, the design director of League of Legends, will be talking about using user feedback to improve your game design. So this is something that, for example, I'm very interested in. And also anything from game design track is something that appeals to me very much.
Well, hope you find it useful. And finally, if you were standing here in my place interviewing yourself, what question would you ask yourself?
Whoa, not sure at all.
I guess you have all the answers then.
Yeah, possibly.
Well, I hope you find more answers here on 4C, and thank you very much, and have a nice time.
Thank you.
So we've prepared a few questions for one of our speakers. Please introduce yourself.
Hello, I'm Ville Rauma from Fingersoft, Finland. So, yeah, nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too. Please tell me, what's the first game you have ever played, the video game?
I think that would probably be maybe Microsoft Flight Simulator 3. And
It was your very first, right?
yeah.
All right. Which one is your favorite today?
Right now, basically, Divinity Original Sin 2 is like really awesome.
It's amazing. I gotta agree with you there. And what led you to the gaming industry? How did you start?
Well, basically, I was studying in University of Oulu, and we had a training period where you go to a company, and there happened to be a game company in the list where you can pick where you want to go, and I was like, yeah, I want to go there. So that's how I got started.
So they just took you in?
Yeah, because it's like the companies kind of volunteer that we'll take trainees from the university, so you can kind of pick where you want to go. So yeah.
Sounds great. So what is your favorite thing about the video game industry today?
Well, I don't know. It's like it's really hectic, and it's quite kind of free kind of environment where people can really be, who they are, and it's kind of laid back. So I think that's pretty cool.
It generally is. But are there maybe things that make you mad or sad in the today's state of gaming industry?
Well, I don't know. Like, it's difficult to say. Sometimes there are things, but nothing pops to mind right now. Like maybe sometimes like they, especially like huge studios, kind of focus on single thing. You know how it is. Like sometimes there's only World War II games, and next you have only like future mech games or whatever. So it's like always these big trends and less about like innovation and new type of games. So maybe that.
Speaking of trends, do you see any trend surfacing in 10 years or so? How do you view the gaming industry in the nearest future?
Well, long term, like 10 years, I think probably there's gonna be big changes. Like of course VR, AR are big, but right now they're like really new stuff. So it's not really like a big business opportunity right now. But that's probably gonna be big in the future. I think it's gonna take a few years, but yeah, at least that.
So you feel like technologies are gonna be the game changer here?
Well, at least with VR and AR, I feel like the experience is so awesome that when you do that, everybody who tries it thinks it's awesome. But right now, it's just too cumbersome and complicated to do. So I think that's the biggest issue there. But yeah, also of course, there's gonna be probably like different trends in the way games, like the kind of like the free-to-play model right now, how it is, probably will change. It's always changing. So yeah.
That's true, but speaking experiences, what do you think is more important in a game? Like the same age-old question, it's the graphics, it's the gameplay, the storytelling?
Gameplay, of course. Yeah.
The simplest question of all. Okay, so what do you think about St. Petersburg?
I love it so far. It's the first time actually for me in Russia and in St. Petersburg, so yeah.
And what about the conference?
Yeah, it's looking really awesome. It's like well organized, so I like it.
What was the best question you were asked so far?
I don't know which game you are playing right now, of course, because I'm waiting to go back home so I can continue playing.
I completely understand you there. Which question would you ask yourself if you were interviewing yourself?
Oh, that's a hard one. You know, what's going to be your next game? And I couldn't answer right now because we are working on a lot of prototypes and we'll see what it's going to be. But yeah.
Great. Are you looking forward to any specific presentation? Which do you want to listen to most?
Yeah, I did mark a few. I don't remember the titles right now, but they were like interesting because there's a lot of like really cool people here who know like a lot about a lot of things. So yeah, I think for me maybe on the kind of leadership business track is maybe the most kind of interesting for me right now because that's my job. So. Yeah.
Well, you're one of the cool people here, so thank you for coming and thank you for being a part of this.